Mr. Taylor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate it. I guess as we wait for, there it is. There's our presentation in all of its glory. So then I'll just get right to it. Thank you for inviting the California Citizens Redistricting Commission to present at your meeting. As previously stated, my name is Derek Taylor, and I'm one of the 14 commissioners selected to draw the new electoral district lines following the 2020 census. Before we begin the formal presentation, I want to share a little bit about myself and why I chose to apply on the commission. I'm a Southern California kid, although I went away to Georgia to go to college. Born and raised in Southern California, grew up in the San Gabriel Valley, currently work in the San Gabriel Valley. But I have many friends that are out in your area of the earth. So a lot of ties to the Santa Clarita Valley. So I'm more than happy to present to your group. In this Redistricting Basics presentation, we'll be going over who the commission is, what we do, and how you can get involved in the process. Next slide, please. Thank you. As a friendly reminder, California Government Code Section 8253, parentheses 3, strictly forbids commissioners and staff from taking public input outside of a regularly scheduled commission meeting or official public input meeting. However, at any point, you are more than welcome to visit our website at redrawthelinesca.org to provide input. You'll find instructions on how to do so under the public comment section. Next slide, please. What is redistricting? That's the million-dollar question. We're trying really hard to make redistricting sexy. The word is hard enough to say, but it's rather challenging. Redistricting is defined as drawing new boundary lines that determine which Californians are represented by each electoral district. Next slide, please. You might be wondering why we have to redraw districts every 10 years. It is important to note that a lot changes in those 10 years. Communities change, priorities, interests, and goals, things that make up the community, they all change. People are born and die and move within California and out of California. Communities grow and shrink, and areas that were once roughly the same number of people become unequal. These are some of the reasons we need to draw new district lines. As communities change, the districts need to be updated to reflect those changes. Next slide, please. One of the greatest powers that people of California have is to elect their own representatives to conduct the business of their government. How the district boundaries are configured can make the difference between empowering and maximizing the voters' voices or minimizing and muting those same voices. In most other states, politicians redraw districts and often end up drawing safe districts for themselves to allow them to stay in office. Redistricting has been used at times to exclude communities from political power. By fully participating in and monitoring the upcoming redistricting process, more communities may have the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. Speaking up about your community is critical to help keep your community whole to the best extent possible. This ensures that your voice is heard by your elected leaders when making decisions such as the quality of life and funding of your child's education or determining your tax rates. Your input is valuable in shaping the new political boundaries. Next slide, please. How does this all affect you? We thought it would be beneficial for us to break down how redistricting affects you directly. Power to the people. The Voters First Act was historic in California. It transferred the power of drawing district maps from politicians and gave it to the people. You're able to champion your issues. Having the opportunity to elect representatives that champion your issues is important in a state like California, where issues can vary drastically from one street to the next. Northern California might champion environmental and economic issues, while Central California might champion water and agricultural issues, and Southern California might champion issues dealing with transportation, housing, and employment. It speaks to funding priorities. Tied to the issue of elected representatives that champion your issues, you might want to elect representatives that have your financial issues at heart. When the time comes to build a budget, you will want a representative fighting to ensure your community gets the financial resources it deserves for various services such as education, water and fire protection, and law enforcement. Redistricting speaks to community boundaries. The redistricting process is all about drawing lines and determining which communities get grouped into districts. Your input in this process is essential to help the commission understand where your community starts and ends. Redistricting in California is one of the few civic activities that any Californian can provide input for regarding their community that ultimately impacts the law and regulations, tax structure, how funding is distributed, and which services are provided. Next slide, please. The US Constitution requires that every American receive as close to equal representation as possible in government. As populations of districts change over time, it can leave some people overrepresented and others underrepresented in government. Redistricting evens out the population between districts. After the federal government publishes updated census information, California must redraw the boundaries of its congressional, state senate, state assembly, and state board of equalization districts so that the districts can correctly reflect the latest count of the state's population. Redistricting is based on the idea that each of our voices should be represented fairly by creating districts that have the same number of people. Census results are used to draw new maps every 10 years to account for the ways that populations have changed and moved across the states and districts. At the federal level, reapportionment takes place to reallocate US House seats among the states. This too is done after each national census to ensure that seats are held by the states in proportion to the size of their population. California currently has 53 House seats. This has changed since the latest reapportionment data has been released, and we're now down to 52. Historically, legislatures have drawn maps that allowed them to choose their constituents rather than enabling constituents to choose their representatives. This former system undermined the concept of fair representation, which is to give people the power to choose their own representatives. Next slide, please. So why does redistricting matter? Why does independent redistricting matter? We have talked about how redistricting affects you, and now we will explain why independent redistricting matters. Democracy depends on voters having the opportunity to choose their representatives. When elected officials redraw the lines of their own districts, they get to design their own territory and choose who their voters are. This slide highlights key terms in redistricting to help you understand why is it important to delegate the power of redistricting to the people. Gerrymandering happens when the election district boundaries are drawn in a way that gives a particular set of people, like a political party or racial group, an unfair political advantage over another. This graph shows how in a jurisdiction with 50 people, 60% orange and 40% purple, 5 districts can be drawn in multiple ways, but it's not always fair. The first 2 examples show 2 ways to draw district lines in a fair manner, where the districts are drawn to reflect the population proportionally. The 2 examples on the far right show ways to draw district maps in a manner that does not reflect the population fairly, which is referred to as gerrymandering. This is why independent commissions like California's commissions were created to remove the politics from the process and focus on the people. Next slide, please. The commission must follow these criteria in this order when drawing district maps. Number 1, districts must be of nearly equal population to comply with the US Constitution. Number 2, districts must comply with the Voting Rights Act to ensure that minorities have a fair opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. 3, districts must be drawn contiguously so that all parts of the district are connected to each other. 4, districts must minimize the division of cities, counties, neighborhoods, and communities of interest to the best extent possible. 5, districts should be geographically compact, such that nearby areas of population are not bypassed for more distant populations. This requirement refers to density and not shape. And 6, where practical, each Senate district should be comprised of 2 complete and adjacent assembly districts. Board of Equalization districts should be comprised of 10 complete and adjacent state Senate districts. In addition, the place of residence of any incumbent or political candidate may not be considered in the creation of a map, and districts may not be drawn for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent, political candidate, or political party. Next slide, please. Thank you. We are one of many redistricting efforts occurring in California. The commission is redrawing districts for state offices, while county, city, school districts, water districts, and community college districts are also redrawing their districts at the same time. We wanted to bring this to your attention because different efforts are happening simultaneously, and it can be confusing. Aside from being involved in the state redistricting process, we encourage you to also be involved in your local redistricting efforts. Participate in all phases of redistricting. Next slide, please. As Suzanne stated earlier, there is some history to redistricting. Prior to 2010, legislatures in California drew the lines. If the legislature failed to properly draw the lines, the courts drew the lines. In 2008, California voters passed Proposition 11, the Voters First Act, authorizing the creation of an independent commission to draw new district lines for state Senate, state assembly, and Board of Equalization. In 2010, Proposition 20, the Voters First Act for Congress, added the responsibility of drawing congressional districts to the commission. Our goal as a commission is to spread the word that the people's role did not end with being counted in the census, and to collect valuable community input to assist us in the process of drawing the new district lines. The 2010 Redistricting Commission was California's first independent commission. The 2020 Redistricting Commission is building upon their work and will leave behind detailed documents to assist the 2030 Commission when they perform their duties. Other states with independent commissions include Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Michigan, Montana, and Washington. And there's several other states that are in the process of vetting out or seeking if this is the approach that they want to have to their redistricting. Next slide, please. Commissioner selection. How did I wind up in this enviable position serving the people of California? The commissioners all went through a rigorous application process that attracted over 20,000 applicants in 2019. After an initial review, over 2,000 individuals completed a supplemental application. After a very thorough and public review, 120 applicants, 40 Democrats, 40 Republicans, and 40 not affiliated with those two parties, were invited to interview, from which 60, 20, 20, and 20 were chosen to be presented to the legislature. The California legislature was allowed to remove no more than 24 candidates, each from each candidate pool from consideration, leaving a total of 36. The first 8 commissioners, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and 2 not affiliated with those two parties, were selected through a public drawing in 2020. I was one of the commissioners selected in that public drawing. A ping pong ball fell out of a barrel and it had my name on it, or my number. The final 6 members, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 2 not affiliated, were then carefully selected by the first 8 commissioners in August of 2020, taking several considerations into account to include political party, geography, race, gender, and expertise. Next slide, please. And this is your 2010 commissioners in all of our glory. Meet the 2020 commission. We are a 14-member commission made up of 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 4 members not affiliated with either of those two parties. The commissioners are diverse in geography as they are in opinions and expertise. We managed to be a pretty good working group. There are 7 from Northern California, 7 from Southern California, 8 women and 6 men. We range in age from 30s to the 60s. I'm somewhere in the middle. There are NGO leaders, engineers, pastors, law enforcement officers, political scientists, a lawyer, and public servants. Join us at one of our commission meetings. They're currently all held online due to COVID-19. Instructions and a link for attending our online meetings are available on our website. Next slide, please. What do the commissioners do? After the education sessions, this is one of the education sessions, the commission will hold public input meetings and accept community input and public testimony to assist it in drawing the new electoral maps. The commission will draw the maps for the 4 different government bodies: Congress, State Senate, State Assembly, and the Board of Equalization. If you look at the slide presentation, you'll see the maps. The example they use is Sacramento. Those would be exemplars for the Congress, State Senate, Assembly, and the BOE, the Board of Equalization. They all look a little different. Next slide, please. From February until May, and that's probably been extended a little longer, we are conducting these redistricting basic presentations to educate the public about the redistricting process. We have divided the state into 11 outreach zones, A through K, to better manage our outreach efforts and build relationships with community groups. We are eager to engage all communities. We are more than happy to set up a redistricting basics presentation with any group that requests one. We plan to have this presentation available in video form in case groups would prefer that option. Next slide, please. And you hear us talking about it a lot. Now I'm going to explain communities of interest, or COI. When drawing maps, we have to be mindful of communities of interest. We can obtain the city and county information, but we need the communities of interest information from Californians. Communities of interest are defined as concentrated populations which share common social and economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. Examples include areas in which the people share similar living standards, have similar cultures, use the same transportation facilities, have similar work opportunities, or have access to the same media. People can belong to multiple communities of interest. Keep in mind that communities of interest are not the same as a district, but communities of interest are key building blocks of districts. Some ways to describe your community include geography, such as the waterways, rural, urban, and mountain areas, boundaries, cities, towns, counties, or schools, or other things that your specific community has in common. Next slide, please. Your input is vital to the success of the commission. We have identified the ways you can participate in three simple steps. Describe your community. Tell us about your community. What are your shared interests? What brings you together? What is important to your community? Are there nearby areas you want to be in a district with? Nearby areas you do not want to be in a district with? Why or why not? We want you to draw your community on a map, and send your testimony directly to the commission. All this can be done by using an online tool that allows you to describe, draw, and send your input to the commission by visiting drawmycacommunity.org. You can use what we call the online COI tool at drawmycacommunity.org. Next slide, please. What are the ways you can participate in public input? You can provide public input to the commission in several ways, including submitting your input through the Communities of Interest Mapping tool, the COI tool, by visiting our website at wedrawthelineca.org, by emailing us, by phoning us, or you can even send us a letter. In addition to English, the online COI tool is available in Spanish, simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, Vietnamese, Tagalog, Korean, Armenian, Farsi, Arabic, Russian, Japanese, Punjabi, and Khmer. Next slide, please. COVID-19 has delayed many things, including our ability to access census data to help us draw district maps. On February 12, 2021, the Census Bureau announced it would deliver redistricting data to all states by September 30th, 2021. And in March, the Census Bureau announced it would provide the census data in a legacy format in late August. So any delay after July 31st and the state receiving the census data means that the commission's final maps will be due after December 15th. We are working with the legislature and others to minimize the impact of the delay on the 2022 elections. Next slide, please. This is our timeline based upon the information we have at the moment. This is not in stone. It is fluid, and we hope to be around these dates. So from February to May, education presentations. We hope to receive or have public input meetings around June through October. In September, we hope to have the census information. We will transition once we receive that census data, November to December, public input meetings, including line drawing sessions. Once that occurs, we will be able to have draft maps around December. January, public input regarding those draft maps, further line drawing sessions, and sometime in February, based on this timeline, which is fluid, the final maps may be released. Next slide, please. And as a final reminder, per California Government Code Section 8253A, subsection parentheses 3, commission members and staff may not communicate with or receive communication about redistricting matters from anyone outside of a public hearing. Therefore, the commission will not be taking any public input during these education presentations. To provide public input, please visit the commission's website at wedrawthelinesca.org. And last slide, please. Because we want to engage the public in the redistricting process, we are conducting educational sessions like today's presentation prior to going out for public input. To request an educational session, please contact the commission by emailing Marcy, marcy.kaplan, Kaplan, @crc.ca.gov. Please follow us on social media at wedrawthelines.com. I know it's a mouthful. It's a lot in a very short period of time, but we want public input. We want you to visit our website. We want you to use the COI tool. We want you to describe, draw, and send your input regarding your communities. Thank you very much.
Mr. Taylor, thank you very much. And just so you know, your